Welcome to PacTalk. I'm Randy Schriver, Chairman of the Board of the Institute for Indo-Pacific Security, and we're delighted to have you join us for our second episode, where we strive to bring you insights and updates on the Indo-Pacific region, things happening in DC related to that. And to do so, I am joined by my Democrat friend and colleague, Derek Mitchell.
And board member of IIPS, proudly so. Gong Shi Fa Cai, Randy, happy New Year of the Fire Horse.
Now, is Fire Horse considered good luck, or?
I think it is good luck. I think it's a good luck year. What do you know your symbol?
Well, I do. I'm the Ram, which
Really?
yeah.
Well, that explains a lot, right? You explain to the audience.
It might be coincidental that I turned out to be an LA Rams fan this year and in my life, and no one would lie about that this year after the killing in the semifinal game there against Seattle.
No, they weren't. They acquitted themselves very well. The Super Bowl was not great, but that was a pretty good game.
It was a good game, but
no,
you don't get credit for second place in the NFC.
No, well, it was always next year, I think. And when I sit here in Washington, we think about things here. It's the ice is melting, and all I can think about is not football anymore. That goes by quickly, but pitchers and catchers. That's what's making me happy. Those who aren't in DC have no idea how great it is that it's starting to warm up after the month we've had. But baseball's around the corner.
Optimistic for your teams and the Nationals, or?
Well, I'm a Braves fan first and foremost.
Yeah.
Nationals are not going very far, but Braves, if they can get out of the injury realm, get out of their own way. I think the mascot last year was the Red Cross. They were, their entire starting pitching lineup was sidelined, I think, at one point of the year. But yeah, look, every team is undefeated in February and hopeful, and your Red Sox, I think, are going to look fairly good, I suppose. But
I like their offseason moves, actually. They didn't get the big bat, but they got some good, solid pitching. So here we go. I think the rich got richer. I think the Blue Jays and the Dodgers both strengthened themselves. But
yeah, well, we'll see. We will see.
So let's talk about what's happening in Washington, D.C. And I do mean that in the broad sense. D.C. in Munich, for example, is a big topic. As it seemed that most of our colleagues, including those working on the Asia-Pacific region, were in Munich having side discussions, responding to Wang Yi's speech, etc. What was your overall take on that, Derek?
Well, yeah, I mean, what happens in Europe matters to Asia. I mean, what happens in Ukraine, what happens on, we talk about New START later, a lot of things happening these days. And I think in Munich, there was one of the big themes was concern as much about the United States as about China, which is not where we want to be as the U.S. My biggest concern, I was stunned that the response to Marco Rubio's speech was so positive. I think the blowback is starting to happen. I don't know if you've seen some of the articles about it, but
yeah, do you think, is that just expectations? I mean, particularly after J.D. Vance's very harsh and critical speech the year before. I mean, it's like, I suppose the speech was reassuring, but yeah, you read the fine print and
yeah,
there's some things that maybe would be concerning.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to tell the audience to read it, but it is important to see what's being said. It was the same themes as Vance's speech, just in much prettier language. Talk of civilization. It's like, I think it was, I counted 13 mentions of civilization and defense of civilization, erasure of Western civilization. And I imagine for a European audience, they might see that as reassuring, that we're connected to Europe. But if I were Asian, or let alone African, or others, I would wonder, how America is defining itself. It was a pretty retrograde view of the United States and what we stand for.
Yeah, I guess, if it's back to the expectations game, they seem to put Greenland on the shelf a little bit for the most part.
Yeah.
And, the talk of a reimagined NATO or a NATO 2.0 is a lot more reassuring than do we really need to be a part of this thing, and Article 5 is meaningless. And so, again, I think a bar had been set and there's enough in there that the alliance should hold. And, it's got... I think greater clarity from the United States side. I mean, there is a difference between Europe taking primary responsibility for its own defense and being a part of and contributing towards its own defense. And I think that position is crystal clear now.
Yeah, no, I think that is, we're hoping that's the case. I just would like the administration to never sort of honor colonialism again explicitly in a speech. I mean, it doesn't look good when you talk about the good old days when Western civilization was expanding
Yeah.
into the benighted world of and bringing Christian faith, which was, I think, the definition of Western civilization, which also leaves out people like me and others. It was a very disturbing speech in a lot of ways, and I was stunned that your guy Marco gave it or was willing to give it. But I, it was just. But I just hope that okay, the speech was given. This is consistent with the Trump ideas, but I hope maybe in some ways I hope people in Asia don't read it too closely because it doesn't make us look very good.
Well, Wang Yi was there as well, and he was
Yeah,
sometimes in the past, Wang Yi showing up is a win for us.
yeah, yeah.
He has
I
the
always think.
habit of talking down and bullying, and I guess
Well,
we're becoming a little bit like China. But
I think
how do
they're
you,
getting it. I think Wang Yi there was reassuring. He gave the speech that no one believes, but it was all about multilateralism. It
yeah,
was all about working together. I forgot the name of it. It was something very glossy kind of title to the thing. But I always read them with a little bit of a smile because I always think China's projecting. It's like we're we are against countries that use power against weak states, and we believe in international. We're against those who violate international law, and we believe in democracy. And it's like,
yeah.
really, no one believes it, but yet they do it with a straight face.
Yeah, our China Commission had a hearing yesterday, and among other things, they said that China is a sovereignty hawk. I was like, well, except Ukraine, except Kingdom of Tibet, and but
Yeah. Well, how about Myanmar, Burma,
yeah, yeah.
where they have said basically making that a protectorate, as it were. So
Hey, I
yeah.
want to mention one other thing because this is Washington, D.C. we're talking about. I'm sure everyone is tracking. Early voting has started in Texas in the primary. And yes, not in DC. This is not a DC literal in the
No.
geographic sense, but
And you're from
um,
Oregon, right, Randy?
I,
So you don't have this.
I am. We don't
Yeah.
have. It's been a while since we've had a competitive election, but Texas very well might have a competitive election, particularly if the front runner on the Republican side, former Attorney General Ken Paxton, defeats the incumbent John Cornyn. Presumably, he's a more vulnerable candidate in the general election. And if the conventional wisdom a year ago was this is a great year for the Republicans in the Senate, the House could be in jeopardy. Now we're looking at tight races in places that were considered ruby red, like Texas, like Alaska.
Mm.
Sullivan is running just a couple points ahead at this point. So, we could be looking at a pretty significant shift in DC politics come November.
Well, Randy, look, as a Democrat, we've learned never underestimate the ability of the Democratic Party to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory.
Well,
So,
I think you're not only a Democrat, being a Braves fan, being a
no,
Giants,
hope
and
over experience. Yeah.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But
But no, this is, look, I think there is the good money is that it's going to be a pretty big sweep because the views of Trump are solidifying. The views of MAGA seem to be solidifying. The economy is not going well. The immigration stuff, the people, if you're listening from around the world, ICE is making not just an appearance in Washington, but all over the country, literally in Washington, and in terms of government thugs around the United States. So, yeah, I think the feeling is that this administration's on a bad trajectory and it's going to ripple out. But
well,
what that means for Asia, we'll have to see.
yeah,
Because
and our Attorney General at the federal level decided to bring the Mean Girls burn book with her when she testified.
yeah,
Literally flipped the pages for all her attack lines on
well, yeah, I was actually
Republican.
surprised you haven't mentioned AOC in Munich and what she said about Taiwan, which, but I was ready to say in return if you had mentioned that, which I guess now I have on my own terms, is that I think we both have seen senior officials mangle Taiwan policy, over the years. But that was a mangling, but it is not unheard of
Yeah,
for people to mangle that policy. But
yeah. I
it's caused
remember
a bit of a stir back here in the United States.
I remember asking the State Department spokesperson one time, actually the late great Richard Boucher, is there anything that sort of rivals this in terms of the precision required in the language and the wording? And he said, yeah, the Israel, West Bank, Gaza stuff comes close, but no. Taiwan, how you talk about do not support independence versus oppose and all this. Every word is loaded and
Yeah.
has to be precise.
Yeah, there is a litany, indeed.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll turn to our hot takes. We'll take on a few particular issues of note in Asia. Thematically, I think this week, because there are a lot of things that could be packaged together, not just singularly in a particular country. And I'll start with trade. We've had a few trade-related things, and starting with the U.S.-Taiwan free trade deal, which was finally, which we've all been clamoring for and hoping for in some respect. But it's the seventh by this administration, by the Trump administration, that they've finalized. And I think it's hopeful. I think that clearly the Taiwans want to get this thing done. These things are as political as they are substantive.
Absolutely, yeah.
So just the symbolism of getting the thing done is really important. But, we're hearing rumblings within Taiwan, KMT, the opposition, just like in the arms sales stuff, that they may like this even less than the arms buy, the special budget. And I could just imagine on this that if you're holding up both the package, the special budget on arms, and you're holding up the free trade agreement, in particular the free trade agreement, which is getting big buzz among farmers in the United States, that is not going to be viewed terribly well by this administration, particularly as Beijing, as April comes up. I don't know what you think, Randy.
You're exactly right. I mean, it's a big deal, and people forget that Taiwan, despite being small in population size, 24 million people, it's a top 10 trading partner, and particularly, Derek, as you mentioned, agricultural products. It's our sixth largest destination in the world for agricultural products.
Do you realize, Randy, just quickly, that Taiwan was our fourth largest trade partner last year after our adversaries Canada, Mexico, and China?
I did not. So they were fourth overall.
Fourth last year.
I got to update my talking points.
Semiconductors is one of the big ones.
Sure.
A majority of it. But I had seen that in some of the clips. I was stunned. I mean, really important.
That's calling, that's the statement, punching above your weight. Number 4 definitely matters, particularly when you think of countries. So more than Japan and Korea?
Yeah. Again, semiconductors, I think we're driving like almost 50% of it.
That's crazy.
So there's a lot at stake. And we understand, we know how sensitive trade can be. And there has to be a process, and it's a democracy, and you need the opposition, the parliament, to look at this closely. And I was stunned because the farmers were getting, we're at the center of this, the agriculture, the dairy, the beef, and all the rest, which is great for America, but it's going to be a challenge politically, particularly for DPP. Yeah, that's their stronghold. But
absolutely. Well, I remember the now vice president. When she was in the LY representing Hualien and what all the work she had to do on ractopamine, and I haven't said ractopamine in a while.
No,
I used to say it daily back in those days.
Yeah. Well, you have to think about Korea in this context too, because they're struggling with their free trade deal.
Yeah.
And Trump upped the percentage, right, to 25% because he was impatient with. So this is where Taiwan does not want to be. Yeah. You wonder how long it will be before Trump pulls that trigger. But look, trade is really important. The Japan investment stuff is important. That's now being announced. Korea has to get on the right side of that. So anyway, a lot of stuff happening in Northeast Asia on the trade side.
Yeah, let me make a very subtle shift from trade to nuclear weapons. The hot take I wanted to discuss next. The end of the New START treaty, which is significant in the U.S.-Russia relationship, of course, but I don't know that anybody has really sort of captured the possible second and third order effects, knock-on effects, and you got to wonder about China, right? So the U.S. and Russia, roughly 4,000-ish warheads, and some degree of control over delivery systems and how those are accounted for in the now old New START treaty. Mm-hmm. But the Chinese, the DoD report suggesting they could surge to 1,000 warheads in relatively short time, who have never expressed any interest in arms control and have always said that that's really the purview of the larger nuclear weapon states. Could this really spiral out of control in terms of a new arms race?
I think that we're right in the brink, and people are talking about arms control the way they did in 60s, 70s, and 80s, and the return of nuclear brinksmanship and potential for destruction, and also proliferation. I mean, now in Europe during the Munich Security Conference, there was concern that the United States may not have the same credibility with its nuclear umbrella. And what did that mean? The Germans went to the French and said, "Can you give us your nuclear umbrella over us?" in lieu of going nuclear themselves. So again, turning back to Korea, they're, 75, 80% of Koreans
That's amazing.
are saying that they're favored nuclearization in the face of what's happening in the North. The Japanese, I think, are holding back for historical reasons and sensitivities. But you can see a cascading effect if we can't get our arms around a new deal that takes into account the Chinese.
Yeah, I get the logic of why enter into another bilateral agreement with the Russians. I mean, I don't think we're in a safer world now without an agreement
Yeah,
with U.S.
I
and
agree.
Russians. But then again, if you can't pull China into this in some way, and presumably they'd be more comfortable if they're at a trilateral table with the Russians sitting beside them, or otherwise their no limits partnership finds a hard
Yeah,
ceiling there pretty quickly. But the other thing is, you mentioned proliferation. There's also the testing. Our
right.
Undersecretary of State for Security, Tom Donano, in a public speech, mentioned that we have proof of the Chinese testing low yield warheads below the threshold of detection, particularly when it's containerized using an old test site, is basically what that means. So President Trump has obviously said we should be able to test. So you're talking about an arms race fueled by legal treaty-bound restrictions. You're talking about more testing. You're talking about other countries desiring, so the horizontal proliferation. So I don't know if this is back to the future. I don't know if this is a whole new world. It seems like a whole new world when you talk about the number of countries that could be involved in this.
Yeah, it's a scary new world, as you said. We are not safer because of this. We are not more secure because we have more nuclear weapons, more testing, more countries, more proliferation around the world than we've had, since the 60s, 50s. So certainly before 1963, limited test ban treaty. So stay tuned on that front, and obviously the stuff that's happening with the U.S. and Russia is cascading into Asia in ways that are unsettling, I think, for
Yeah,
all.
I agree with that. Well,
So,
take us home with elections.
yeah, yes. Well, on the bright spot, with what America means to the world in ways that Marco Rubio did not talk about in Munich, about what we mean and what we stand for, which is the inspiration that we have had for 250 years in democracy and freedom, and we've seen that in Asia over just the past few weeks. You've had elections in Thailand that were quite vibrant and surprising in result. You had Bangladesh, which was driven by young people. Also in Thailand, the latest energy was also youth-driven. But Bangladesh had an interesting election. And we'll be talking to Yuki Tatsumi of IIPS in a couple moments about what's happening and what happened in Japan. But it's encouraging. I mean, each of these has its own dynamics. But those who say Asia is not a democratic, is not consistent with democracy, or Asian values are, and we'll have to, take it up with these countries. In Thailand, in particular, you had a surprising result with the old guard winning when the polls said that the new guard was neck and neck, at least going to be competitive. But I think once again, like we say about Xi Jinping with Takaichi in Japan, that they can probably credit Hun Sen and Hun Manet and the Cambodians for scaring folks straight in Thailand and rushing for stability,
Yeah.
rushing for security, and they went back to the old guard for that.
Hun Manet, who's in D.C. this week, by the way, for the
Ah,
Peace Board. Is that what it's called?
oh yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
What is that called? Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, yeah. No, that is encouraging. There's also the upcoming election in Nepal, first week
Right.
in March. Um, there were some challenges, some legal challenges in Thailand. Is that all played out, or is it just presumed to not going to alter or affect the outcomes?
Yeah, I don't think there's a sense it'll affect the outcome.
Yeah.
I think the opposition will have to lick their. It was just not their time because of traditional patriot politics, the kind of rural-urban divide stuff. But and I think even the Trump factor, I heard, there's a sense that people wanted stability, and you're getting that in a lot of places where people just want a little bit of care. It's not a time for change. And I think Takaichi represents nationalism, standing up, against the Chinese. I think the folks in Thailand stood up to the Cambodians, and nationalism is coming back. It's not all good. You don't want these tensions to be driving politics.
Yeah.
But and in Bangladesh, you have leadership, the same old family politics. But again, I think it was a fair election, and hopefully there'll be some stability where there was not. So it's something that we're going to have to be engaging with. I don't know how much we are as America. We're so focused on these big issues of China. But when it comes to Thailand and Bangladesh, I would call that win for stability, not in terms of the result, who won, but in terms of hopefully a stable future going forward.
Well, that's very encouraging.
Yeah.
Next on PacTalk, we have a very special guest. Very special because she's one of ours. Yuki Tatsumi recently joined the Institute for Indo-Pacific Security. Very much our gain. Yuki's had a long and distinguished career in Washington-based think tanks, also previous service at the Embassy of Japan, and is widely regarded as one of our premier experts on the U.S.-Japan alliance. Yuki, thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
You skipped the most important part, Randy, where she was there at peak CSIS in the early 2000s.
Right.
I said long and distinguished career at think tank.
You got to be specific, Randy.
That's important to you.
We were very, very proud. You still are now. Oh, great.
Derek and I are both CSIS alums.
Indeed.
So
Everybody goes through CSIS at some point of their career, don't we?
That's it. It's a way station.
as a stepping stone to get to double IPS clearly. Yuki, thanks for joining us. We're very interested in your take on the election in Japan. We could editorialize, but you're the expert. Give us your quick take on it.
So it was definitely unexpected in terms of the margin of her victory. None of us thought that she would do badly because she went into this election with a very high approval rating, but no one seriously expected her to win that big. I actually happened to be in Tokyo when they were counting votes for a family visit, and it was so captivating that I ended up staying up until like 3 watching the election show. It was remarkable in the sense that many of my LDP Diet member friends, most of them I don't worry about, but there are a couple of those who really don't do so well on the single district winner takes all contest. But even those people got the become like an elected winner in a very, very early in the evening. So when I saw that happening for like 3 people, I knew it was going to be a big win for her. But I think quick to sum up is partly it's a combination of her own approval rating, but then also the collapse in the opposition side. That left side, liberal side of the Japanese political spectrum kind of imploded on themselves. So that basically led to even bigger win than anybody would have thought. But I think we will watch closely what she does next. She just formed the cabinet today, and she didn't swap out any of the cabinet members. I think she's.
I was going to say, new cabinet. I didn't hear about a new cabinet.
So actually, it is still like procedurally speaking.
Yeah.
She still had to convene like a new extraordinary session. She still had to be voted again into the prime minister, and she still had to formally form a cabinet, which all happened within the last 24 hours. She didn't swap out anybody. So no big news there. I think she's very happy with her current team.
Well, I mean, this wasn't just a win. This was the biggest win in LDP history.
Right? Oh, yeah.
I mean, this is extraordinary. And clearly there are a lot of folks who care about the U.S.-Japan alliance who are reassured when she had a great meeting last
Yes.
year with President Trump, and
Yep.
she'd stood up to the Chinese. So we're hoping for, kind of hoping quietly that she would prevail. But when you win that big in any election, you can get hubris, and
Yes.
usually that's the moment of complacency. I mean, what do you think of the landmines that she's going to face going forward that she needs to be concerned about?
Yeah, absolutely. So you could clearly tell that she's kind of getting herself up for that challenge, because I was watching the election night, like I said, and if any party leader who would win that big, you would expect her to be like all smiles. She was not smiling. She looked very serious. She smiled for the camera, but throughout the night, her facial expression kind of tells that she appreciates the weight of that big win
Yeah.
and what she needs to do to keep that win.
I mean, she's an
think,
incredibly hard worker, right? I mean, she's someone who stays
Yeah.
up all night. She's always been extremely
Yeah,
careful. Yeah.
yeah. And then actually, it was kind of interesting because that also contributed to the lowering popularity of the opposition party. So this is the age of a social network. So all this diet questioning, which is kind of silly, which they still call upon her to answer it. So there are all these captions saying she had to stay up until like 3 a.m. for this kind of stupid questions, right? So that's like all over the media throughout, in Japan mostly. So that also worked in her favor. She ran remarkably effective campaign compared to any of her predecessors in terms of leveraging the power of the social network site and or the YouTube channel. But yeah, her challenge starts now, because now that she wins this big,
Right.
voters expect a quick change
Right.
relatively. So how soon she can deliver that on the domestic side, I think, is going to be the biggest landmine of all.
Well, on the international side, after the election, they announced a visit date for the prime minister to visit Washington. So there'll be another Trump Takaichi meeting. What are your expectations for that? I mean, obviously she shows up with very solid domestic support, very strong politically. Mr. Trump respects what he perceives to be strength. What are your expectations for the meeting between President Trump and Prime Minister?
Yes. So obviously, President Trump kind of announced that summit date for her, even before the election. So I was talking to, friends in a foreign ministry, some of you, many of them, you both know well. They're like, well, we thought it was going to be March 20th, but then he went ahead and announced on March 19th, so I guess it was going to be 19th. But, they still say that within the time difference, it's technically 20th for us. But anyway, so I think our biggest expectation especially on the U.S. side, is whether she can come up with the concrete number one investment case that she and President Trump can sign with a
Right.
big fanfare. I think that is the biggest thing. Minister Akazawa was in town last week to start doing that intense prep work leading up to that. She saw, he met Lutnick and all that. I think that is really the biggest thing that both sides is hoping to see. And
Is
other
that
than
realistic by the 19th, 20th?
I think with the prowess of Japanese bureaucracy, you both know this well. I think they will make something happen.
They're going to have to, right?
Yeah,
They know
something
they're on the
ceremony
block.
worthy happen.
Yeah. I mean, the announcement the other day, right, of the 36 billion in investment out of the 350 as an initial
Yep.
announcement
Yep.
gets the headlines, which is
Yeah.
wonderful. But that's forgotten within a couple days in this administration.
Yes.
You got to deliver
Yes.
on the summit. And they
Right.
got to name it too. I keep thinking they got to name it with something golden, right? Like the golden.
Yeah, I'm
investment.
thinking like something for golden age or something, infrastructure,
Yeah.
golden age for infrastructure or
Yeah,
something like that.
I thought
right?
Defense Minister Koizumi pulled it off well in Honolulu when he said,
Oh yeah,
"MAGA,
make
the
alliance great always.
always."
Yeah. So he actually tested it out last year when he was in DC. at the our all of our shared alma mater CSIS when they had that forum.
There it is again.
Yeah, he there it is again. It never leaves us.
Now I should remind our audience, this is brought to you by double IPS.
This is by double IPS, but yeah. Well, all the roads leads to double IPS, so there you go.
What I mean, speaking of China and such, what do you think China takes from this? I mean, they must.
Oh gosh.
Prime Minister Takaichi
gosh.
must be sending flowers in a way, because it just galvanized her support.
I was like, you know what, China, Beijing, you seem to be the gift, keep on giving, because the nastier you get, she gets more support within Japan. And then that is actually one big sea change, because if it were only 5 years ago, even like if she stuck it out like that, there will be a pressure kind of internally to start tamping down the tension and start, reaching out to Beijing. None of that was happening. So that is, I think, one big sea change when we talk about the mood of Japan and the general perception vis-a-vis Beijing.
And it sounds like the Chinese are just going to ratchet up the pressure. They're not going to ease the pressure, not going to learn a lesson that this is counterproductive. They're actually going in the opposite direction.
That seemed to be the case. And I don't know if they were hoping for President Trump to weigh in on her when he sees her in it, kind of dangling the big trade deal. But I think that is precisely why Takaichi is coming here before he goes.
Yeah.
Right.
So
I also think the Chinese are very focused on Trump's visit to China, and there's the perception that he can have a great conversation with Prime Minister Takaichi, he can have great conversations with others, but all of that can be not entirely swept away, but that can be diminished significantly if the big, beautiful deal comes together in Beijing. And President Trump has already truth socialed at least twice the G2 concept with China, which is, I think we used to refer to this as Japan passing back in our day, but it's a version of the same thing if they're going to be overshadowed by U.S.-China, excuse me.
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's exactly something that she wants to prevent. I think she's going to play to her, connection with his good friend, late Prime Minister Abe, as much as she could. And she did. That's what she did the first time that they met. I think she's going to do this again. And then I think she would probably start adding her name to it, and then, throw in this golden age of this and that. But she, I think, might be actually better at handling, maybe not the good word, but then, facing Trump in terms of how to get him to do and say things that benefits U.S.-Japan relations as opposed to the other way around. So we'll see.
Exactly. We'll have to see, because a lot of folks have felt, we got it. We handled him fine. And the next day he comes out and says something that, particularly on trade, and just blows everything up or asks for more or whatever it is. And I don't think he drums. So you're not going to be able to do another drumming summit as she did with the Korean prime minister. So that's an unfortunate gap.
So that's what we're all talking, speculating that what is she going to do with him? Right? Yeah. Is she going to sing karaoke with him, or is she going to do golfing with him, or what is she going to do?
Yeah, and some of those moments can be really important. I mean, people of our generation, I should say mine and Derek's, we remember Deng Xiaoping at the rodeo in Texas with the big cowboy hat. We remember
and Modi in Texas with a big cowboy hat.
That's
Howdy
true.
Modi. We remember Prime Minister Koizumi going to Graceland. Remember his, apparently he couldn't help himself but to pick up all these Elvis artifacts that weren't supposed to be touched, but hey, he's the Prime Minister of Japan.
Hey. But his son is picking up after his father and playing ping pong with the Korean defense ministers.
And where the defense minister spent time in the 2000s? CSIS.
Hey.
Yes.
So that's where I got to know
don't say
them.
that. Don't. Yeah, we're going to make it that we're going to change this, that they'll start spending time at double IPS as opposed to over there. Yeah. So we need to figure out how that happens.
CSIS. But Yuki, thanks so much for taking the time on this.
Thank you. Thanks
you
for
are
this.
really a gem, and fantastic kind of advisor and analyst of U.S.-Japan relations for so long. So we're really grateful you joined us as really our first guest on
Thank
PacTalk.
you. I'm very honored. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
And now it's time for our person of the week on PacTalk. Derek, I'm going to kick this to you to let us know who your person is.
All right. And thank you, Randy. And like last week, if you'll indulge me, I have a runner-up first and then a person of the week. I may take a little longer. But I just want to say first runner-up is Linu Xiang. Maybe you've heard of him. He was I'm going to look down on notes a bit because he has a great background. He was the flag bearer for the Taiwan delegation at the Milan Winter Olympics and the first Taiwan skater to be trained and grew up in Taiwan to skate, to make it to the Winter Olympics as a skater and compete in the Winter Games. So this is a huge deal. There was a guy named David Liu who had trained in the United States back in the 90s, but this is really the first time. So Linu Xiang, he came in 23rd in men's singles, but Jiayo, Linu Xiang, for what you did, a real milestone. Gongxi, gongxi. The one I chose, of course, Randy, it's hard to avoid for me, is Jimmy Lai.
Yeah, thank you.
And I know you feel very strongly about Jimmy Lai. This guy, I think most of our listeners, I hope, know the story of Jimmy Lai. But just for those who don't, this is a guy who people know that he stowed away on a boat from communist China, made his way to Hong Kong, worked his way up, became a media mogul, garment mogul, billionaire, and had everything, going for him, and every reason to simply sit back on his money, play it safe like every other tycoon in Hong Kong.
Exactly.
And yet he stepped up for democracy and human rights and put his neck on the line through Apple Daily, and he got 20 years for it. I mean, he's been in solitary for much of the past several years, but he got a sentence of 20 years just last week. And we just cannot forget him. This is a true hero. When you have media types in the United States, as you know, Randy, like Jeff Bezos, we talked about last show, this is a profile in courage that is extraordinary. And if this is what Eastern civilization will become, then I'll take Eastern civilization as much as Western civilization in the 21st century, because it's extraordinary story.
No, his story is very inspiring and now has taken a tragic turn. And this 20-year sentence is just absurd for so many reasons. Saying that he was a threat to the national security threat, I believe, were the grounds in which he was convicted. It's a shame, but he is withstanding all this and still really providing hope and inspiration to a lot of people who are really emboldened by the fact that he stood up. Because your point about other tycoons in Hong Kong, and you and I have met many of them.
Yes, we indeed have. Yes, we know them well.
And lectured probably by the same Hong Kong tycoons for being too critical of China. They all made that choice. They decided they would keep their wealth and lifestyle and keep their families in great wealth, but in doing so completely kowtow to the leaders in Beijing, and he sure didn't.
And as I say, we can see it right here in the United States, the cravenness, the corruption of and the destruction of the Washington Post, because a guy does not want to stand up for journalism. And Jimmy Lai was basically convicted for committing journalism, as it were. So.
I was going to say, I was glad that Marco Rubio put out a pretty strong statement in support of Jimmy Lai.
Yes, he did.
The administration has not always been quick to note these developments when it comes to human rights, religious freedom, but I thought that was a particularly strong statement.
Yep, indeed. So your person of the week, who you got?
Well, you've been giving backups and third and second, so my person of the week is actually a pair, and this is a bit of a nod to my father who just passed recently. My father was a man's man and a manly guy, but he had this one thing: he loved figure skating. And so in addition to watching the Detroit Lions in the great Bobby Lane days and the St. Louis Cardinals with Stan Musial, he loved figure skating. And so my people of the week are the Japanese pair that won the gold medal. So
That was great.
First Japanese gold medal in figure skating happens to come in pairs. So Riku Miura and Ryuichi Kihara are my pair of the week, people of the week, for just an unbelievable performance. They came from fifth to first and really did well for themselves, their family, but really their country, and really stood proudly showing Japan and all its strengths.
I don't know if you watch it. I watched both of them. I like watching figure skating too. I mean, I like all the sports. I mean, it's incredible athleticism.
Yeah.
I mean, just an amazing grace and all the rest. But I watched they were favored in the first. I think it was a short program. The guy slipped. He slipped up. He dropped her, and you could see the look on their faces, which is just devastation. And then the second time, they absolutely had a perfect performance, perfect,
it was.
and the look of joy, and it was almost tear-inducing. I know in Japan they become a sensation, so you need that. We need that these days. We need great stories,
Yeah.
So the good choice.
Well, thank you again, Derek, for joining us for PacTalk, and for our audience, thanks for tuning in. Keep an eye on our social media various outlets for things happening at IIPS. We've always got events, publications released, and I think you'll find some good stuff there, including some upcoming events. Thanks again, Derek, and to listeners, wish you well.
Thank you, Randy. Till next time.